I don't see Jen Fulton yet. But in the meantime, if we could have our Tetra Tech moderators walk through some of the high-level things they heard today. We can also address any technical issues folks might have had, or any parking lot questions that we might have for Pennsylvania or EPA. And then we're going to put the this evaluation link in the chat, and I'll send an email later today. We would love to get your feedback on each one of the sessions, what worked well, what didn't, what things do we might need to change for tomorrow's session. And then your feedback is also helpful for that other forum that we're doing in June. So I'm going to turn it over to our Tetra Tech moderators.
Adriana, this is Kelly. I'll jump in.
Okay, go ahead, Kelly.
Okay, for the session on minimum control measure 3, IDDE, we had Eric Maines and Nathan Walker, and we talked a lot about the benefits of GIS sewer system mapping. And I think the big takeaway from that session focused on the fact that if you develop an MS4 GIS map and you do mapping through a GIS platform, there are so many integrated benefits to doing that. It's not just for IDDE, and it's really not just for stormwater. And the investment, we were told, is around $5,000, but it can do so much more. So that was from the first session. The other session was the Shallowbrook Elementary School riparian buffer session with Ryan Davis and Jody Sepulzio. And that was a magical presentation talking about the stars aligning for collaboration in developing a riparian buffer on school property. They couldn't do a full stream bank restoration project, but they decided that a riparian buffer project would address the issue. And it involved master watershed stewards who had to get in 50 hours of training, and they worked with school kids to get a lot of trees planted in this property, and I highly recommend folks check out those resources if you weren't in that session. And then we just got out of a session with Rebecca Davis from Lower Allen Township on developing a stormwater fee and the importance of really having outreach at the beginning of the fee development and making sure that your credit program and your appeals policy is done before you actually launch your fee. And they're at the point now where they have people actually thinking ahead in terms of how they can reduce their stormwater fee and installing BMPs. And she says she's dealing with a lot of folks right now, and that's great that they're embracing the fee and essentially putting BMPs on their property. So it's really helping out the township. And they're funding some really great pollution reduction projects with the fee that they're achieving. So those are from my sessions.
All right, I can go next. So we started the day with a great presentation from Latisse Brown and Jessica Fieldhouse about implementing post-construction BMP mapping and tracking. Essentially, they have about 120 locations with BMPs, about 148 total BMPs that have been implemented and are currently being tracked. And so they walked us through the CS Datum software program that is great for tracking the location of the BMPs and also the conditions. So Latisse uses that in some of her inspections when she does go out. And Latisse walked us through her spreadsheet for how she tracks the different BMPs. So I guess first off, when any private development implements a BMP, they try to make sure that the BMP design and the agreement is recorded with the plat so that that's official. And then anytime the property might change hands, the owners are notified about the BMP and the O&M requirements. And then each month there is a different set of BMPs that are inspected. And so each BMP is at least checked on the annual anniversary of the implementations. So there's a set that Latisse is checking every month. And so for private properties, that is currently a self-certification. Latisse has a form that she's worked out that is self-fillable that can be filled out online, or that she can mail to the private landowners that gives or asked them to give a summary of the condition of the BMP, and then if any maintenance is required. So Latisse is also available if the new homeowner just doesn't understand the BMP or has an issue. She will go out and visit the site with the homeowner and help them understand the requirements of the BMP. So there were quite a few or a couple of questions there on some of the guidance. So for new homeowners, how are they made aware of the guidance for the BMPs? And so Latisse does include some examples, or whenever the new homeowner or new property owner closes on the property, Latisse sends them a letter that documents the BMP inspection requirements, the requirements for the township, a sample of the form that they need to use, the agreement that's recorded, and then, like I said, she will visit the site if necessary. And so there is some guidance there available for them as well. And so that was, again, a great part about the developing the stormwater program and implementing and tracking BMPs. The next section was another great case study by Adam Smith and Bob Verich of the Adam is with the Fish and Wildlife Service. Bob is with the Spring Creek Trout Unlimited group. And so they talked about a case study about the Hauserville Stream Restoration Project, but they gave quite an overview in the beginning. And so it was generally about they began their efforts just to restore streams. It wasn't until later that it became part of the BMP program where they started to get credit for the MS4 program. But they've done about 31 projects since 1990 that covered around 22 acres. They removed about 824 tons of sediment from creeks and streams in the area, around 14,000 pounds of nitrogen, and 3,350 pounds of phosphorus. And then, of course, with the focus on trout and the habitat in the creeks, and the other notable accomplishment is they've planted about 72,000 native trees. Um, So that was another great case study there. Again, we got a couple of questions about permits, and generally the permits that they have had to obtain are related to the habitat and the rocks and grading for the areas. But then they also have a great lessons learned there. So they're looking at the long term and implementing these projects. And so it can take a while to get all the permits, making sure that they have the proper partners all lined up. They work with a lot of nonprofit, commercial, and then the private sector, and most importantly, reaching out to your private landowners that are going to be directly impacted by the stream restoration, and then community relations. So they did a lot of education of the community. The stream restorations, and while they were in progress, got a lot of attention. So they spoke with the residents and the citizens around the community, and then also do community tours once the restoration efforts have been completed. And so another BMP that can be implemented to help as part of the meeting the requirements of your MS4 permit. And then we wrapped it up with a great presentation from Adrian and Bruce from HRG that talked about establishing a stormwater fee or utility in Camp Hill Borough. So they did a lot of analysis in the city and so by implementing that stormwater fee, they were able to remain cost neutral. So they were able to supplement a lot of the income that was lost from the tax or property taxes during the pandemic, and actually implemented the fee as well during that pandemic. And so they mirrored it a little off of the stormwater fee. So there was a stormwater fee implemented in this, or I'm sorry, a wastewater fee implemented in 1997. And so they mirrored some of the efforts from that and looking at implementing that fee. And so they evaluated all the infrastructure within the community to assess each property for the percent of impervious area, and then developed their fee from that. And so I thought very interesting slide that Bruce and Adrian showed was about the difference between gaining the fee or the income that they need or the revenue that they need to implement the stormwater management program. And it showed that it is more equitable to have the fee than to do it based off of the taxes. So that's a good way to get the residents on board. And so there were quite a few questions about community engagement and implementing the public meetings, how they outreach. So they used a lot of Facebook, public notices, mailers with the bills to get public input and presentations, and had quite a few community meetings to gain consensus on the fee. So I think that wraps up the 3 sessions that I was moderating.
And this is Barry Tonning. I'll run through mine quickly. Kelly Curtis from South Middleton Township covered minimum control measures 1 and 2, public education and outreach, and public participation and involvement. Talked about the importance of target audience and considering all methods of outreach, everything from one-on-one contact to newsletters and presentations to elected officials. We also heard about Freddie the Fish. There may be t-shirts in the future. I don't know. We'll see. The next presentation, a breakout presentation, was on the Fox Run stream restoration, which was a wide-ranging project that considered everything and incorporated everything from floodplain restoration and dealing with legacy sediments and getting quite a credit on legacy sediment load reduction for their PRP. The project also included a site park, a new road to a school, trails, a disc golf course, relocation of a sewer main, pedestrian bridge, wetland establishment, just an incredible project with multiple benefits for the community. The last presentation, we heard from Brian and Tess from Pinvest on a new grant program they have where they can do a 2-week turnaround on decisions for projects that are less than $500,000. We also heard about the potential for new stimulus money coming down and advice for people that do have or are creating a wish list for projects to be ready with that in case the stimulus money does come down in the near future. We also heard about the benefits of loans, especially now with a 1% interest rate for loans, and the benefits of borrowing the money now for projects and funding them through general funds or fees or whatever funding mechanism the stormwater program has, and getting the benefits of those projects now rather than waiting to see if you can get a grant. Maybe you're turned down year after year, and then maybe eventually you'll save up money for a project in the future versus borrowing the money for the project now, getting it built at today's dollars with today's interest rates. Again, 1% is pretty low, and having the benefit of that project from now on. So 3 really good breakout presentations. A lot of information to digest. I'm glad these are recorded. I do want to go back and look at a couple of these and actually pass on the links on a couple of these presentations to some of my colleagues. So that's it for me, Adriana.
Okay. All right, awesome. Thank you. And I want to remind everyone that if you're interested, the links to the first form that we did in February are actually on our training page. So there's a link to the training page from the agenda. So feel free to, these recordings will also be posted on that page. So there'll be, as Barry said, a lot of information to digest, but it's all available for you. Before we end, are there any technical questions or any problems that we need to fix for tomorrow? We sent a bunch of reminders. I think there was some confusion about keeping multiple windows open. It's best to hit the leave button, go back to the agenda, choose the title that you're going to attend, and then go into that meeting room. It's best to have only one Microsoft Teams window open at a time so that there's no confusion and you don't have feedback from multiple rooms. So hopefully that is a little bit more clear. We'll include that in the reminder that we send with the evaluation link in an email. So I don't see any questions in the chat box. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to put in the survey link. So please today take some time and give us your feedback on the sessions you attended. Let us know how things went. Let us know what we can change for tomorrow and for the the forum that we're doing in June. And again, if you would like to speak or attend that forum in June, please let us know, send us an email. All right, if there are any other things, you guys all have our email address, let us know, but we will see you promptly tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Have a good night.